Hey everybody, before we get started, I just remind you this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Adam the Harp, Icon Comics, Okay Zume, Architect Hand Blackers the G, Carlos, Dragon, Ferris, Jeremy Vasquez, Jonathan Sandoval, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Richard Raptor, Rogue Robin, Charvor, Shiny P, Sun Guy Nabob, Siren23, and Varian the Crow. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon and get access to episodes early, and that's what really helps out. Thank you for your support, everybody. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Hopefully. Maybe you'll roll this 5-star. Anyway, today we are talking about Europa, a new permanent writer who was added on the Atlantis Second banner. When I wrote these notes, she wasn't out yet, so I had to do an audible earlier today when I went to actually go record this. And sorry if this one's a little late. I kind of figured Europa was not a high prio wanted to scoot out there, you know? And y'all have said for much more interesting wanteds that you want to hear that you're okay with a little bit of delay. So we're recording this a little bit later. We'll get it out there for everybody, and hopefully you enjoy it. If this is your first time watching a Let's Talk FGO Wanted, basically what we do here is we talk about a servant's real-life history and mythology, their lore in Fate with a capital L, their mechanics, and how rare they are. Not their star rarity, obviously, but how frequently their raid-ups are. Now, obviously, Europa will be permanent, but you never know, right? Spoofs can take a long time before you use no time. So let's get right to it with that history. So in case you couldn't tell, mythologically, Europa is a little bit of a big deal. Her name is the origin of the term Europe, and she does actually have a little bit of an important place in the Greek lineage. She's connected to a lot of people, and is part of not the earliest, obviously, but a very early generation of culture heroes and the like. Now, her exact family differs, her immediate family, but she is always a Phoenician princess, so from Phoenicia, who is also a descendant of Io, another famous cow-related consort of Zeus, and also origin of a lot of important Greek bloodlines. So there's a lot of looping going on, though there's like 3 or 4 generations between Io and Europa. Now, before we even get to her relationships with Zeus, and from there, we already have a footnote here. Her brother Cadmus is one of the historically first Greek heroes. I put historically in scare quotes there because, obviously, history of culture myths is not the same thing as history. But Cadmus is supposed to be one of the earliest generations of Greek heroes, founder of the Greek Thebes. It's probably technically Thebes or something. Those Greeks love their syllables. Anyway, he's generally a cool guy who's related to some heroes and demigods. Now, Europa's main myth goes that Zeus, chillin' from on high, becomes enamored with Europa, a princess, and he hides amongst her father's herd of cattle as a white bull, because of course he does. Now, Europa sees this bull while she's out doing her chores and thinks it's real neat. It's a real neat bull. And also, he's very tame, so she pets the bull, and then apparently petting the bull works, so she decides to jump on its back, and then Zeus runs all the way to Crete. That's right, he just skedaddles through the ocean to the island of Crete. At Crete, he reveals himself to, in fact, be Zeus, and not just a white bull. He makes Europa the Queen of Crete, and gives her a necklace made by Hephaestus, a bronze guardian called Talos, the hunting dog, Laelaps, and a javelin that never missed. So if you've ever wondered why she's a writer, that's right here. True writer material. Got like 5 noble phantasms. All right. Now, with Zeus, she had at least 3 sons. I say at least. We'll get into that in a second bullet point. But the ones you know most are King Minos of Crete, that guy, father of Ariadne, Rhadamanthus, who went on to become Heracles' stepdad after being exiled from Crete because his brother was kind of a cunt. And Sarpedon, who was one of the major Trojan allies during the Trojan War and was killed by Patroclus in Achilles' armor. Though in the actual original Iliad, Homer gave Sarpedon a different genealogy. Later writers said that Sarpedon was one of Europa's children. Now, there are also some other possible kids, including names Allegonia, Carnus, Dodon, and actually Crete. But that last Crete, I have no idea who that's supposed to be. There are several women called Crete who are supposed to be either goddesses, nymphs, etc., who embody the island or are famous people from there. I don't frickin' know. Anyway, after bearing Zeus' sons, Europa married King Asterion of Crete, who is different from the Minotaur named Asterion, though that one was probably named after his step-grandpappy because he was childless, which is why King Minos inherited the throne. So, yeah, there's a long, drawn-out symbology and history for how all those people came to be. Now, using the name Europa to refer to land started a little bit early. The Greeks actually used it to refer to the land of Thracia below the Balkan Mountains. And then the Romans actually used it to name a province in Thracia as well. So there was a Roman province, Europa, near Turkey, modern-day Turkey. No idea why they chose to do this, because the area named Europa is nowhere near Phoenicia or Crete. They know that's where she went, but that's not where those geography is. Anyway, the term seems to have crept in as a way to refer to the Greek-speaking half of the Roman Empire before ultimately being adopted by ecclesiastical sources as the term for the Empire of Charlemagne. So we go all the way to the period of Charles the Great, Charlemagne. And from then on, European was used to refer to the Christian peoples of the continent. So it starts as just a couple of areas, upland of the Greek peninsula, south of the Balkan Mountains, and then gradually transforms into, it's the Greek-speaking half of the Roman Empire, and then it's just like, it's all the lands owned by Emperor Charlemagne. The European Union also uses Europa as a symbol a lot as a result of this. Europa is also the name of one of the coolest moons of Jupiter. It's the icy one with the subsurface ocean. Rad. Now, Europa's things also have some additional folklore and history. The hunting dog Laelaps can allegedly catch any prey. Several generations later, somebody eventually thought that they could use it to defeat something called the Tumesian fox, which could not be caught. This resulted in a paradox until Zeus got tired of it and yeeted them into the heavens as Canis Major and Canis Minor. That's right. Somebody had some divine animals that had, the unstoppable force immovable object problem. And how do we solve this? Zeus got fucking tired of it and threw them into space. Now, Talos is a massive brass man made by Hephaestus to protect Crete. He circles the island 3 times a day and was eventually killed by Medea when he blocked the Argonauts from landing on Crete after they recovered the fleece. Now, how she does this depends on the exact telling, but basically Talos had a single nail which kept in his blood, his veins, which ran from head to toe, and through some method, Medea got him to pull the nail out, or pulled the nail out herself, and then he died. Also, though he himself was the White Bull, in some legends, Zeus recreates the White Bull and places it in the heavens as the constellation Taurus. So this is obviously not always the case, but this is one of the possible origins for the Taurus constellation. It should also be noted, bust out your red string, it's time for me to do this again, that there's some scholarship which indicates obviously this myth was originally Cretan in origin, explaining kind of like how they came to Crete, but also it can possibly be traced back to Phoenician myths involving none other than Astarte. Europa's name in Greek means broad, which means it might be etymologically related to the full moon. There is a lot of images of a goddess or mythological woman with a bull in Phoenician temples, so we could just keep crawling back up that etymology chain. Boom. So in Fate lore, not much is that different. Europa has actually been foreshadowed for a while. Ever since FGO Materials 1, she was mentioned in Medea's profile in relationship to that Bronze Guardian Talos. Europa's backstory is basically what it is classically: Zeus, Crete, 3 sons, etc. Don't add any extra children. The main new wrinkle of her personality and how she interacts with a lot of other characters is that as a consort of Zeus, she views everybody descended from Zeus as her own descendants. She calls them her children and grandchildren, stepchildren, whatever. This expands her family tree. She also considers everyone continentally from Europe as her descendants because the name is hers. So this just expands the zone of where she can be motherly and stuff. Additionally, it should be noted that one of her 2 noble phantasms that we know of, Kionis Taurus, used to be Laelaps, but she wanted it to have the form of a white bull for reasons, which gives her different abilities and ties into that myth of Taurus I mentioned earlier. So FGO acknowledges she should have the hunting dog, but they have the bull because of the symbolism is better, and it gives her different powers. Europa doesn't actually appear in Atlantis, but will be a character seen in Lost Belt 5 Part 2, Olympus. Yeah, that's a thing, I guess. Alright, let's talk about mechanics. So Europa's stat spread is actually kind of interesting. She's a little bit of a higher attack, but her HP is actually the lowest of SSR riders. This puts her in the ballpark of Marie Antoinette, an SR rider. So it's not the best attack, but her HP is definitely the worst. It's a little bit of a shame. Though, that may also be to balance out some other factors. If her HP was super high, she might be kind of annoying. So she's quick, arts, buster with pretty decent NP gain and hit counts for all that stuff. Pretty normal setup. Her NP is an AoE buster. It also amps her buster damage first based on overcharge, starting at 20%, and gives her that sweet magical 50% defense up for 1 turn as well. So this is a pretty tanky one, but like I said, that actual damage output's not going to be bad because her attack is pretty decent and you get free damage amps. So this is why I think her HP is low. Her first skill gives her 3 hits of invul, just 3 hits of invul, never goes away. and 3 times also of 50 to 100% debuff resistance. So it's not straight up debuff immunity, but it does amp your debuff resistance to 100% at max level. So basically it's 3 times of debuff immunity if you level it. That might be a little hard. But straight up 3 hits of invul, pretty solid. Second skill is a pretty standard 3 turns of 20 to 30% up on both arts and buster cards, and also is a 20 to 30% battery. Fairly decent, though obviously we're going to talk some comparison later. We don't usually do that, but I think it's important for why you may not have heard people using Europa. 30% is not super big compared to some other people's batteries, let's just say. And then final skill is a flat 60% chance to charm all enemies, and it gives them 10 to 20% def down and crit chance down for 3 turns. Pretty typical turtling stuff. Passives are magic resistance C, because you don't need debuff resistance. You've got a skill for that. Writing A+, so that one quick card actually slaps pretty good. In Divinity C. So you guys can see immediately why most people aren't impressed by Europa. It took me about a minute and a half to run through her entire mechanics, basically. It's kind of like if she was Mary and were more buster-oriented and obviously had more attack, but still was not quite a pure offensive unit. For permanent units, Drake has been around much longer and is much more devastating in terms of wave clears. She has a Pierce and a 50% battery, and Future will have an NP steroid and defense ignore. And in terms of limited Buster AoE writers, Ivan's kit is way more bonkers. I mean, there's something to be said for Iskander after buffs, but like in terms of raw output, Ivan has a bonkers kit. People were saying he was going to be meta, though obviously he didn't turn out to be, but he has a lot more crazy steroids. That said, as an Arts Buster hybrid, she has potential as a tank with those stuns and hard defenses, and can slap pretty hard on an NP BB turn. The Arts cards and buff seems intended to let her fire her NP regularly, though she has a battery, of course, as well. Her Charm and Invul options make her pretty hardy against certain enemies, though I will often say Charm is typically hard countered in serious boss fights. It's not a very ideal stun. But she will slap pretty hard with that NP if you max skill 2. You're looking at a minimum of 50% buster up on that for 1 turn, with a 50% defense up after, because she gets 30% maxed on her skill, and then 20% minimum on the overcharge. So, considering her attack's not the worst, that will amp up pretty high, but still, there's some wiggle room. Now for CEs, with her battery, you can use a K-Scope from skill 1 to just have her blow up waves. You can also use an imaginary element if maxed for fast farming. Other than that, you probably want to focus on Buster and NP enhancement since it's her primary focus. Though as a writer, she can also possibly crit just because she sucks up all the weight to herself, even though she doesn't have any amps on that on her own. Something like Aerial Drive might be nice, get you started a little on NP, get you some of the Buster crit you need. Now, in terms of team comp, I'm going to state the obvious here. You should pair her with Merlin. This gives her a full 50% charge on that second skill in Merlin's Dreamlike Charisma, even more invuls, and gives her a whole new offensive buff in terms of Merlin's Charisma as well. Plus, Hero Creation at max level will take that Buster amp to plus 100% for that 1 turn. You will do big red damage. She also, interestingly, has a perfect partner in the form of an upcoming unit, Koyanskaya of Light, who is a focused Buster support with rapid NP potential. Koyanskaya of Light, if you haven't looked at her kit, is all about Buster generating NP. So that will also be very good support for Europa. You can use her as a great wave clearer, but also, obviously, you can still use Drake. It kind of hurts. The main thing Drake's missing is those hard defenses, but you can work around that. Otherwise, consider Europa your tank unit to clear mobs and live through some tough shit while your focused DPS brings the pain. Her only team-based buffs are AoE Charm, the defense, and crit down, but you can exploit that kind of stuff while she blows up mobs and adds. I would say she is technically the DPS and she has almost no team support, but you can use her as kind of a Buster stall. It's not the most freaky-deaky kit, but it certainly works. Like I said, if you pair her with the right servants, that Buster amp gets huge. And she will probably live through the clapback turn with that 50% defense up and those 3 invuls. Now, I will tell you another reason why I think Europa isn't popular is her brutal Ascension and skill requirements. Ascension alone sets you back 5 Comet Shards and 9 cores. And for skills, at least one of which is important, you will want to max out that battery and card amp. You will need 24 crowns and 10 Comet Shards per skill. That is a huge number considering who else might want in on that action. Spoilers, it's Castoria. Castoria needs Comet Shards. Not that many. Well, that many, actually, I think exactly. It's a brutal comparison. Now, for banners, Europa has a banner for the Atlantis release. That just happened. That's why I'm shooting this right now. I can ignore my joke about should. Also, she will be on Valentine's rate up as a female unit, and because she's AoE, she's also on that weird AoE only rate up. Those are her only rate ups, though. Now, as a permanent SSR, added before the end of 2021, she is available on the free SSR ticket coming with whatever our equivalent number of 20 million downloads is if you really want her for free, or if you just have literally all the other permanent SSRs in the game. Someone. And being a permanent, you could get spooked by her basically anytime you're not rolling on a GSSR or something, though like I said, the odds of that happening are actually statistically awful. It's been a while since I talked about that, but yes, the math is horrific for spooks. But yeah, that's Europa. Hopefully she gets to kind of stand on her own a little bit compared to Super Orion on this banner, but I suspect a lot more people are rolling on this banner for Achilles and Astrea, because they're actually in this event. So yeah, we'll see if anybody actually wants to go for that. That's wanted. I hope this one wasn't too rushed, but no, seriously, my notes are only like 2.5 pages long, so there's only so much I can do. Europa has a very straightforward kit, very straightforward myths, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, be sure to tell your friends about it. And of course, if you like this video, like it. If you have any comments, leave in the comment section down below. You can also join our Discord, channel link, and page description. From there, you can access our little roll thread if you are rolling for Europa. And of course, like I said at the front, consider supporting us on Patreon. Could have gotten this video a little bit early, though only a little bit. I'm a little rushed here. And it really helps support us. And if you thought this video was cool, but you want to hear about a unit people are more bonkers excited for, check out Wanted Orion. All right, that's me's. I'm going to go now. I got to edit this together and do like 5 more things. Bye.